So I'm not sure how you usually do this, but so my name's Laya. This is
I'm Drakpa.
I'm a Drakpa.
Yep.
And we've come up today from Palden Padmasambhava. It's a Tibetan name, so we're within all of Buddhism. We're coming from the practice and study lineage of Buddhism that came to Tibet in the 8th century. It was established by the great master at that time, Guru Padmasambhava, as well as another great Indian master, Center-10, who were invited by the king at that time, King Center-10. So I'm sure maybe some people are familiar, some not, but again, in our tradition, it's always good to remember our spiritual ancestry and our lineage. So within Buddhism, of course, it was established by the Buddha Shakyamuni, who came into the world about 2,600 years ago, plus a few hundred years, depending on different historical accounts. And long story short, just brought his beautiful, unique teachings on exploring the true nature of every single living being, which is really a teaching and message of love, understanding, peace, nonviolence, wisdom, compassion. And these teachings were, kind of alighted and awakened in the minds and hearts of many people at that time. And Buddha taught according to the different kind of perspectives and inclinations and capabilities of all the different people he met. And those teachings were taken into the minds and hearts of many people and, became part of their living experience. And this kind of flourished all throughout what's now India, up into what's now Afghanistan, Pakistan, China, Southeast Asia, all around. It's kind of known as the light of Asia. And then again, so Buddhist civilization was shining all throughout Asia, and Tibet was one of the last places for the Buddhist teachings to kind of come as far as Asia goes. And so while it was known, it hadn't really come and, where living teachers really came and brought the teachings for people to explore for themselves. So again, it was at this time where King Center-10 was very devoted and very interested in the Buddhist teachings, invited these great masters to come establish the teachings in Tibet, which they did. And Guru Padmasambhava, again, our center is named after Padmasambhava, who's again kind of known as the second Buddha. Again, this great lineage of wisdom, compassion, which kind of flourished all throughout Tibet. And then many thousand or more years later, is that right? Yeah. And our teachers were born in eastern Tibet, in the far eastern Tibet, and were kind of again raised in that kind of traditional culture. And our elder teacher was named Khenchen Palden Sherab Rinpoche, and then his brother, both blood brother and Dharma brother, Khenpo Sewan Donyo Rinpoche. They were both born there, and around the late 50s, Khenchen Palden was about 20 and had finished his formal study, which is kind of maybe equivalent to like a PhD or something in our culture, at the local, kind of the biggest monastic institute in that area. And Khenpo Sewang was maybe about 10. But this was the time when the political circumstances were really tumultuous with the Maoist invasions happening. And so their father was also very devoted and helped them get out of Tibet together with the family, and as well as so many other Tibetans who, to maintain their culture and their spiritual heritage, kind of were given safe haven in India by the Indian government. And then they both kind of continued their study and practice, and especially Khenchen Palden, because he was a little older, was given, responsibility to teach the head of what's called the Nyingma lineage of study in this department of Tibetan Institute of Higher Studies. And I'll try not to ramble too much, but then at this time in maybe the 60s and 70s, of course, there was also a lot of Americans and Europeans, different people visiting India for different reasons, mostly kind of spiritual and a different way of living. And so they were meeting these great Tibetan masters, these amazing beings. And so would invite them to come give teachings in America or Europe or wherever. And so one of these really great scholastic masters and meditation masters was named His Holiness Dudjom Rinpoche, who was invited to come to, United States as one place. And he established many centers for study and practice of this lineage of Buddhism in the United States. And then he asked our teachers to come in the 1980s. I think it was around 1980, 81, 82. They came. He had a center in New York City, and so they were the head teachers there. And many interested students, from these parts came and received teachings. And they essentially established the Padmasambhava Buddhist Center in the late 80s after His Holiness passed away, to again continue just making these teachings available. And then I had the great fortune of meeting them in the, mid-90s, and Lama Drapa can tell his own story too. So they founded Padmasambhava in kind of 1993 as just a place for people to come explore the teachings of Guru Padmasambhava and Buddha Shakyamuni, according to this kind of traditional lineage of practice and study that goes all the way, again, back to the time the teachings first came to Tibet and back to India. And so, I met them and realized I was quite interested and came to live there. I think in the spring of '99 was the first time I came, and I stayed. I had visited a few times before and been there since, just helping out according to my abilities. And Lama Drapa maybe can speak a little bit too.
Yeah, great. So then Padmasambhava, where we're coming from, is about an hour or so south of here. And so it's a traditional Tibetan Buddhist monastery and retreat center. And it, like Lama Laya said, it was established in 1993. And it's open year-round. It's on 500 acres of retreat land, and it's kind of an animal sanctuary, and has traditional temples, meditation facilities, library, kind of a reliquary, a dormitory building with apartments, and a community building where people come and share meals, and people come all year round for personal retreats or scheduled group retreats. And so I've been living there since 2004. And then, all kinds of people come to use it to kind of get in touch with themselves, or kind of to have a little time away, or to deepen their practice in Buddhism or whatever their spiritual tradition is, and to have a little pause time to kind of just settle and reflect and learn, deepen their meditation or learn about what that is. And so it's kind of a very warm, open invitation welcome for anyone who wants to come and have, Colgate, I'm definitely going to give a shout out to the Chapel House, because here you have a facility where you can do hermitage retreat, and you walk there like 3 minutes that way. And that's it. And like a meditation room, like open 24 hours a day. It's so beautiful. It's so really clean, and has a genuine, authentic spirituality there of all these different traditions. And Rodney and other people I've met there are so kind and warm and accommodating and soft and gentle and quiet. And then all you have to do is go there if you're interested. So that's there. In terms of even just taking a step of what is it just to stop and sit with my mind? If you've never done that, maybe some people do yoga, or I've done that too, just to have those moments where all of a sudden you kind of pause, concentrate in a certain way, kind of just open up, soften a little, and just kind of let your nature kind of come out a little more. So places like the Chapel House, or where we're coming from, Padmasambhava, or these different meditation centers, I mean, more or less where we're from is kind of, it's like a university, except in addition to training the mind with the study aspect of really trying to inquire externally and internally, what's happening? How does this work? Why am I getting upset? What makes me happy? What do I want to do with my life? How can I, what's valuable to me? How can, to like investigate these kind of questions. Then in addition to that, to actually try to develop a capacity to like become more loving, to become more restful and settled and energetic and engaged and curious. That's a very extensive training program. I mean, if you really, everyone is so nice, like turn the other cheek, don't fight violence with violence, like have a loving approach when there's a challenging situation, how to not shut down and contract when everything forces you to shut down and contract, when there's like too much homework and too many tests and too this and that, like how do you still stay open and relaxed and refreshed and like really awake? So that's a big training process. So in terms of the university like this, there's of course we're constantly trying to train our minds, our intellects to become more curious and informed and to see more perspective simultaneously, and that's so valuable. Then in addition to that, how to open our heart and how to get in touch with these goodness qualities we have that everyone has, that it's kind of just foundational to beings, but oftentimes we kind of always looking out and kind of forget to look inside, and then we get in a habit of kind of forgetting to get in touch with ourselves. And so a place like Padmasambhava is that's basically the purpose, to allow a kind of accommodations, or like a nice kind of nurturing situation that's really wholesome and kind of reflective, to relax and kind of touch base with ourselves and have good, healthy, honest relationships, and then also to inquire within and deepen that, because it really is a process that takes time, like anything. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we're kind of beginning to talk a little bit about the process. We just talked about, what's the history, and these are the names, and these are the people, and this is the place. But what's, that's the vessel, but what's the honey in the pot, But just in that sense, like Lama Drapa is kind of talking about what that is. But I think it's too, we're kind of here in the context of like this tradition of Buddhism and the Buddha. So I think it's always helpful to think about just even that word, Buddha or Buddhism. What does that mean? Because that, in a way, kind of gives the vista of what's filling this beautiful treasury, this beautiful container. But right, do people know the word Buddha, the word meaning of Buddha? Means, it's a Sanskrit word, means fully awakened or fully developed to full bloom state. So a Buddha is one who's fully awakened, to what? To just the nature of their own mind, to the nature of reality, both how things are and how they appear, familiar with all these things without any kind of obscuration. And in Buddhism they say too, so that's the mind of the Buddha, is a fully awakened, fully enlightened, without any obscurations. And the Buddha, something really particular too that is inherent in the Buddha's teachings, and he says very loud and clear, is every single person has the potential of being fully awakened to what? To like the mind of enlightenment, which they say is nothing but, they're things we can all relate to: wisdom, intelligence, love, and compassion, like inseparable. Like these qualities are the qualities of enlightenment. They're the innate qualities of our own mind. And so that's why in all the Buddhist teachings can be summed up into one thing, or three things, what obscures. So in other words, what the Buddha said is, every single living being has the potential for Buddhahood, for being fully awakened and at complete peace and complete ability to help others find their own beautiful nature and find their own peace, through all the different myriad circumstances that can occur. The only difference between a fully enlightened Buddha and an ordinary, sentient being, a being with a mind, is the degree to which we recognize that nature or not. That's the only difference. And so when they translated Buddha to Tibetan, they gave the word Sanjay, which means, again, fully developed, but also completely purified. All obscurations are purified. And the Buddha's teachings again point out that we are responsible for our reality. We may not be able to control what happens to us, but how we respond is what makes all the difference now and long into the future, directly, indirectly, for ourselves and everyone else. And so, working with the mind and recognizing what causes more turbulence and trouble and obscuration for ourselves, that's called kind of what maybe negative activity, negative states of mind, negative ways of responding to situations. So we become more aware for ourselves what those are and refrain from causing harm for ourselves and others, directly, indirectly. And on top of that, engage more in what's going to bring more harmony, peace, understanding for myself and others, directly or indirectly. And then it all comes back to the home base of working with our own mind, our own habitual patterns, as well as deeper, becoming more and more familiar with kind of the essence of our own mind, the nature of all of our experiences. So anyway, that's the big, in a way, the whole path, simply said. But then, of course,
don't hurt others.
There's the nitty-gritty.
Help them. Tame your mind.
Yep.
So this is the Buddha's teaching. Don't hurt anyone. Help them as much as you can. And then discipline your own mind. Open your own heart. Then that includes every teaching the Buddha ever taught. But so then on the topic of today with religious communities and kind of the ins and outs of what that's like for us and for other people, then really maybe if you all have particular questions that you'd like to know about. There's monks and nuns at PSL. It's open for that. It's a monastery in that way, so there can be monks and nuns. There's the majority of the people are lay people, meaning they don't have monastic vows, but often people have families or kids or be students or, just kind of professionals doing, from here and there and everywhere. And are there any, because there's a lot to say, but is there any to zoom in,
we're
please,
all here
Corey.
Together.
Yeah. What's been fascinating is just learning about the different communities each week and what a day in the life of is like.
Yeah.
You could tell us what a day, whether for both of you, and what you've learned about living in community.
Yeah.
We'd be fascinated, day in the life, if you could just kind of start there and then open it for questions.
Great. Day in the life, go for it.
Okay. Well, I guess that means just go through the day, right? So yeah, both Lama Drop and I we've been there a little bit longer, so we're a little bit kind of like little older children. So we have a little more responsibilities because we've been around a little longer and a little more familiar with things. And again, so we have some administrative responsibilities and just helping maintain this center, for other people. But then, of course, everyone who's coming there is studying and practicing. So usually, I know I have some responsibilities and I need to kind of make use of my own private time too. So try to, get up in the morning, depending on the time of year, between 5 or 6 and do some meditation and prayer and, just kind of little yoga and just kind of wake up into the day and kind of connect with, the different meditation practice and get going. And then by, 8 or 9, kind of go have a little breakfast and then pretty much the rest of the day, tend to different things. There's people coming to visit, or planning to visit, so keeping in communication with that. And then we have like many different buildings, so helping maintain the buildings and kind of keeping an eye on that, and the different, we're here in the world, so all the things that go with maintaining buildings and property and an organization of people coming and going, so keeping the facilities maintained, helping people who've come to help, so keeping that communication going and seeing who can come and what they're going to help with. And we're kind of, while we're our own location, we're also kind of a central hub for a larger organization of students and centers, so also kind of keeping those larger communications open with different projects happening in the different communities. Like in Tennessee, we have a large community, Florida, Puerto Rico, different parts of the United States, and then in India we have a monastery and nunnery. So just kind of keeping these things open, there's a lot of details to those things. And then we take a little break midday for lunch and just a little, rest a little bit. And then work again a little bit in the afternoon, doing again these same kind of more administrative things. And then we all get together when it's a quieter time, like now. The community all gets together in the late afternoon to do some meditation together and some offerings and prayers for the worlds, and meditate together as a community. And then the evening, again, is kind of open for, often it can be still wrapping up some work that has to get done, but also, we can, a little time to just quiet back down and do some more individual study, practice, relax, enjoy in whatever way, and then go to sleep, and then repeat. And then there's also times of the year where we have more programs where it's like many people coming, and our teachers in residence, and we both have more formal, situations where this great meditation master and scholar is giving daily teachings for, between 50 to 80, 90 people a day. So when we have a program happening, it's a little different schedule as far as we have more group meditations, and then there's the teaching sessions, and then, I'm sure anyone here involved with organizing groups of people working, just all the logistics of that. And we're also very family style, too, as far as everyone who comes lends a hand, so that's it.
And then oftentimes we'll have like a evening study group, a couple or a few times a week, where we'll be going over a book and then investigating the text together and just having kind of an open forum question, kind of little like study session. And then we have volunteers coming in and out. They have like a resident volunteer program for usually people come for a few months at a time or so, oftentimes seasonally, and they'll have a little more time to have responsibilities and deepen their practice and study as well. So kind of, it's an early rise and shine. Try to connect with prayer and open your heart and meditate, put some time there, and then like a window of service in various ways, and then again reconnect and have time together doing a meditation practice in the evening, and then kind of a little study session sometimes, and then it kind of wraps up and goes into the evening. And so that's the basic cycle of a day.
Kind of like having that time every day, whether it's morning or evening, but those are especially good times because they kind of mark the border of our inner and outer worlds, right? But, spending that time to really touch home base and really connect with our inspiration and our aspiration and our meditation, and kind of that wider, timeless, transcendent vista of intentions. And then, of course, here we are in this experience, but keeping that stretch out and breath and refreshment. And then with that, we're moving and dancing with the days according to our capacities and our capabilities.
And then at times there'll be like an extended week-long yoga retreat, and then another time there'll be like a week-long philosophy retreat, or different topics when our teachers there will be training in different methods of meditation. So people who are interested in doing different types of meditation and learning more about them will come and have those like intensive periods of trying to really practice and train in a certain method, doing that together. What do you think? Anything? Any questions? Please. Yeah, you. Yeah.
Do people choose a certain period of time to come there, or is there like a specific time period? You're talking about interns that spend a few months, but what about other people that come?
Right. Yeah, I mean, again, there's kind of two different modes of retreat. There's individual retreat, and then there's these more group retreats. So, of course, the group retreats, people come according to when they're scheduled and when they're happening. And then individual retreat is really, I think, mostly whenever people have the inclination and the ability to come. So we're there all year round, you know, so some people come when it's quieter, you know, and some people come when there's more people around, you know, or when, again, the season's a little easier to drive and move through snow or not, you know. And so it's really, I think, individual to individual according to their schedule and whatever else they have going on in their life.
But people even stop in for an afternoon.
Yeah.
Like some people do a pilgrimage there, or just want to have a nice family picnic, or they want to spend a night at just a quiet kind of place and have some downtime, or spend a week doing a practice. It really depends on the person with what they're looking for to come and have that. Yeah.
So you mentioned different styles of meditation, and I'm sure there's tens or hundreds. But which style of meditation is most often practiced, or is the one that is sort of this is the general one we do here? And if you could talk also a bit about some of the more common ones.
Yeah.
Want me to go for it real quick?
Sure.
So the Buddha's teachings are kind of developmental in a sense. You like establish a foundation of kind of first calming your mind and developing an ability to have it stay calm and like have a real bright, involved motivation and intensive awareness, like kind of really intention and your heart's open. So in general, like the secular term for that now is mindfulness. You're trying to stay present and freshly engaged with what you're doing. So that's like the bedrock of any meditation practice in Buddhism. You want to intentionally place your mind on an object and keep it there for as long as you want with a very uplifted, appreciative, joyful approach.
And relax.
Relax. Not so, stay present, but stay fresh and open and present. So then with that as the basis, then in addition to that, the next basic step is to develop more of a capacity for like this very inclusive type of love. Not just for people near to you or who've helped you, but all beings, strangers, and then eventually people who've harmed you, what are typically called enemies, and also this compassion. To really, so love in Buddhism is seen to be, you see someone and you value them and you want to do whatever you yourself can to make them happier on their terms. Whatever helps them be happy. So you're like giving your own happiness to them, actually. And compassion is you see someone, they're suffering or dissatisfied, they're distressed in some way, and you want to take responsibility and do whatever you can to try to relieve that suffering. So that you actually try to take on their suffering, to have an approach where you're giving your happiness, you're taking on their suffering. So this is in general called Tonglen, like sending and taking, giving, receiving. That's like very essential Mahayana. It's called Mahayana practice that has this view of wanting to do anything that one can do to help all beings have a lasting state of happiness. So all beings, humans, animals, insects, aliens, everyone, everywhere. So that's like there's whole methods of meditation that are trying to develop that infinite, all-inclusive love and compassion, and to do that impartially for all beings. So that's once you have like a calmer mind, so these mindfulness practices, then you're trying to really cultivate these goodness qualities, to have them really be easier and easier to be in touch with them, and more presently your actual experience, and trying to extend that ability longer and longer. And then in the Tibetan Buddhism component, so in addition to that, then there's techniques, they're called skillful means, that typically we see ourselves as kind of these limited beings, you know, my name's Drakpa, I look like this, my gender's this, my color's this, I come from here and there, this is my story, you know. So that's just a typical how we all kind of navigate the world. And that's fine. That's very functional in a lot of ways. But then Tibetan, like Buddha taught in this next level of teachings that, like Lama Lai was saying, we all have this fundamentally perfect and pure nature that's totally awakened and enlightened already. We don't have to do anything to change it. We don't have to buy anything, go anywhere, do any particular thing. It's already there completely. But we have to see it, recognize that nature, and have it be more and more of our lived experience. So the Tibetan Buddhist, or this called Vajrayana, or diamond vehicle, or indestructible vehicle, that level of the Buddhist teachings have a foundation of mindfulness, then with these techniques of infinite love and compassion and care for all beings, and in addition, using skillful means to directly connect with our already enlightened nature, and that already enlightened nature that everyone has. And then come from that view, they say more from an enlightened or an awakened perspective, where we're not just seeing it's little old me and I need to like get rid of all this garbage and then I'm going to become this awakened being, but actually seeing I'm actually this totally beautiful, brilliant, off the charts genius being already, and so are you. And like coming from that perspective and then engaging with daily activities or just a formal prayer practice too. But so that's this all these techniques that look directly at the nature of one's own heart and one's own mind, and in a very vivid, alive, real way experience this already beautiful, totally perfect nature oneself has. And then coming from that very abundant perspective, instead of kind of a more poverty mentality where something's broken and it has to get fixed, I have to purify all these bad things and then I'll be great. Instead, it's the perspective of everything is already very optimally wonderful. And then from there, you engage with the daily experiences of doing homework and paying the bills and doing all that stuff. Like, if you can. I mean, that's the training.
Right. Without fooling ourselves.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're always doing.
Yeah. So not just saying, I'm an enlightened being, so I can do anything I want. Like, that's called all the spiritual bypassing, spiritual materialism. There's all kinds of ways we can use spiritual techniques to get more power for me, you know? Like, it's just the Darth Vader thing, you know? Train in the thing, and then you can, like, hurt more beings more, you know? It's like a total ditch of any spiritual tradition is to have it be about more power for me. Yeah. So those are some techniques. Yeah.
So what role would you say that like humility plays in sort of that self-discovery and like looking at yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And how would you like incorporate that in your meditative process?
Right. Well, I think, yeah. I think humility means we're going to always include ourselves. Like in the approach too, where we talk about, having compassion for other beings means including ourselves and recognizing, especially like within the perspective of Buddhism, where again, right, that where unless we're well on the way, we haven't fully recognized our nature. So on the big picture, we just know, at least even if it's from inference, that we don't, there's more than meets the eye, right? There's not only more to ourselves than we've recognized, there's more to everyone we know, both in the big picture, but also we don't, everyone's come from so many different situations and so many different things. So having that humility in the sense of having respect for ourselves and others, but also having that kind of a tender heart and a tender open mind to the best of our abilities, and being again kind of awake and alert to not always doubting ourselves, but trying to stay connected to what our intention is, and seeing how, right, if any of us have even sat down to try to meditate, we pretty quickly see just how active and wandering our minds can be, So just, I think, in my sense, that humility is just there, just including ourselves in the boat with everyone, you know, both in the big picture of we all have this really beautiful freedom nature, and we're all in the same boat in regards to sentient beings that we haven't recognized it, and we make all kinds of mistakes, but that's not a reason to, like, again, have a humility that's self-deprecating or to put ourselves down, but to just recognize there's a lot we don't know, and, you know, there's always more to know. There's always more we can know about ourselves and the world and each other, and, you know, having that kind of openness in our mind and our heart, you know, to, like, grow and flourish and help others, you know, to do the same.
And then I would add to that that from what I've seen is, like, in any field of knowledge, when someone really trains in looking close in their specialty, that an indication that their growth is going well is they become more humble. You look at scientists, mathematicians, dancers, meditators, like, the closer they look at whatever they're specializing in, the more mysterious it gets to them. And the more they see, there's so much to know. There's so many ways things can be done. There's so much farther to go. It's an ever-receding path of it always becoming more and more and more inclusive, and that's infinite. So I think genuine humility is a really good indication that someone's going really to the depths of whatever the knowledge field is, whether that's a self-aware knowledge of your own heart, your own abilities, or a specializing in exterior things like a chemist or whatever it is, botanist or dancer, it could be anything. And then part of that, the humility being really healthy, is it has a really deep sense of courage. It's not like Lama is saying, it's not self-deprecating, like, I'm no good, I could never know this, I'm so bad, I have all these mistakes. I mean, there's an honest assessment of seeing our limits. We all have them. That's really important. But at the same time, there's this, when we start looking, especially in these more kind of meditative techniques or a lot of these spiritual traditions, you start seeing how beautiful your nature actually is. And then you approach the investigation more from a place of awe and wonder, but also a sense of deep fulfillment. This contentment starts growing, and you say, oh, and I can look further. And I will. Why would I waste my time just kind of like doing some other little small thing? Like, I'm a special being. Like, I'm definitely going to put my energy and resources into investigating this great mystery. So it comes with this deep, like an increasing sense of courage. So it's not like a doormat humility, I'm no good, kind of, I'm not worth it kind of thing. It's not a low self-esteem kind of situation, but more, this is such a fabulous, wonderful, special opportunity. Like, I'm so special, you're so special, this opportunity is so fragile and dynamic, so I'm going to use it the best I can, even though it might not ever be some final answer or some final goal. Like, life's dynamic, it keeps changing and moving and growing and developing and blossoming in so many ways. So I think also there's an indication that we stop trying to find a final answer that we can pinpoint and name and label, and then we're done with it and we can go watch TV, you know. Because like that work's done now. I think it's more like this leaning into, there's never going to be a final fixed answer. It keeps moving. Experience keeps getting only more dynamic, especially the closer you look. It's easy if you look at the movement of a piece of wood, it doesn't seem to move much, but when you start using finer techniques and just looking at a subatomic level, for example, it's like so much movement. I mean, you can't even track the movement. There's so much of it. So the closer you look, the really more awe-inspiring it gets. And that's for poets and for meditators or for anyone who starts looking closer. That humility starts to really come, but in a healthy sense instead of in a unhealthy one.
Just a really pragmatic question.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what are your living situations like? How do meals work? You mentioned that there are children who are integrated into Buddhism. How does that all work?
Yeah, please go.
Yeah. No children live on site at the moment. I mean, in the past, I guess they have from time to time. But yeah, as far as meals, we cook together. I mean, as far as how the food comes, we have a big garden, and then also, you know, people when they come, make a contribution towards meals, as far as the things you have to buy and get. And then in general, we kind of rotate everybody who can cook or would like to cook or learn to cook. Like we have a weekly meeting and people sign up, and we mostly cook like a big lunch and then have a little extra. And then if people want to have more of the same for dinner or something, and breakfast, people, unless there's a lot of people, we kind of just have some oatmeal or toast, fruit, whatever people want to make themselves. So we rotate as far as the preparation, and then everybody ideally lends a hand cleaning up.
And then accommodations-wise, it depends on the person. When it's warmer, there's like camping spots all over. It's a really big land. There's also like dormitory rooms that are like a male dorm setup, a female dorm setup. There's like single rooms also available for people who want a more private accommodations. And then there's also these certain amount of apartments that have like little kitchenettes and a private bathroom and little living area. And if you sometimes, like, the idea of a hermitage is like there's no outlets and everyone's silent, and you like hunker down in the winter because like the cave is cold or something. But yeah, there's really kind of nice accommodations for people who want to come enjoy. And yeah.
Where do you both live?
I have a little room in the temple in the basement, and
then I recently, my wife and I just recently like got a little cabiny house like right on the border of the property, and so can like walk to work, which is kind of ideal. Walk to go pray and do service. It's kind of a nice setup. Yeah.
So I like to dream of a place where the tensions of the world are not impinging on a community's life. But I know that is a foolish thing to dream about in some ways. I guess I've been here now for 15 years. I've watched anxiety take over depression as the number one presenting cause of mental health concerns. I've also seen the rise of movements working for justice and counter movements working against them, and the really toxic political climate. I guess I'd like to hear. You've been. You said 2004.
Yeah, myself. Yeah, and then live 99 or so. Yeah.
Okay, so like that maps on pretty well to like I moved here in 1999. I started working here in 2003. So we're
wonderful.
talking
Yeah.
about the same period of time and the same changes. How has a community committed to a lot of stuff that's basically the culture is roaring back at you in so many contrary ways. What kind of adaptations have you found necessary?
Yeah, it's a big one. How do you stay relevant? I mean, how do you stay relevant with, especially you're talking about like toxic cultural trends for sure, as well as some really beautiful cultural trends either in response to that or that have been going on for a long time. There's a lot of beauty happening amidst a lot of the sludge too, like daily life beauty things. So what do you want to say? What do you think? I'll pass the baton.
Well, I guess my first thought is to, not that these, obviously, here we are. There's, wherever we go, there we are, no matter what time it is. I think we've had troubles and challenges no matter what. That's part of our condition. That's part of, again. But then, of course, the last 20 years, I could say thankfully, really, as far as like immediate circumstances of being, sometimes you get a sense of like, what's like with the local communities, But really, thankfully, it's been very open, in that sense of, like while, who knows how people vote or what they, where their mind's at, like on the outer level, everyone I've met his, you know, pretty friendly and, you know, open, or at least, you know. And I guess like a lot of that is so inherent too, as far as the challenges that we have. It's not like and again, this is within like a Buddhist community where a lot, like, right, that's the Buddha's first teaching, the Four Noble Truths. The first one, the truth of suffering. You know, and again, getting to on the ultimate level, because we haven't recognized the nature as it is, that's ignorance. And therefore, then out of this illusion of things being solid, permanent, forever, you know, and, you know, not in relation, you know, then we have hope and fear and anger and attachment and all these other, and actions based on ignorance and hope and fear and, you know, things like that. And therefore we suffer, you know. So I think that's so inherent in what the Buddha is pointing out, that in a way it's not so much, I mean, of course, it's easy to say when you're not in the midst of your own suffering or someone's immediate suffering that's like a crisis situation, right? I mean, it's always easier when you're not currently going through it but it's so inherent with the training and the teachings, you know, that I don't know, it's kind of, I don't want to make it sound like it's not a big deal or like to like, you know, ignore it or put it down, but it's so much, it's kind of a part of the training, because it's a given that there are challenges, there are crises, there are, you know, there are these states of mind that we can all be going through and acting upon that are just causing more confusion and division and things like that. But then there's this underlying kind of approach of both recognizing that that's kind of, it's happening, and here are the ways they're happening, and then just trying to, again, reflect what, you know, I think it always comes, at least for me, helpful, always coming back to, well, what's my, like you started out saying, what's my dream? What's my aspiration? What's my intention? What do I wish the situation to be, you know? Or what do I wish I could do more or know more about? Like keeping that kind of perspective of like our aspiration and our inspiration and what our true and heart of hearts intention is, and then trying to reflect upon what we can actually do and what tools we do have that we can engage with the situation. Again, I'm sorry, I'm a very vague person, but I'm sure there's nitty-gritty to all of this, you know, but again, to make it kind of more, that approach, I think, is there. And again, of course, it's always easier to say when you're not in the midst of it, but it's helpful when you're not in the midst of it to reflect on those, both the trouble as well as the beauty, you know what I mean? And then when we are in the situation, we're maybe a little bit more able to respond according to our, again, our capacity and our knowledge and our wisdom, or, you know.
And at the same time, then, this is to, if I can jump in real quick.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
There is like systemic racism and injustice and gender inequality and economic inequality, and those are all real things that are navigating like contours of so many people's lives, and there is privilege, and there are people who are intentionally oppressed and like have been for generations. So, I mean, while there is this pervasive suffering that is this, how conditioned existence is, it's like we're gonna eat and then get full and then want more food and eat. I mean, it's just constantly never really satisfied, where that's a true element in Buddha's teaching. I mean, PSL or Padmasambhava is trying to be like a safe space where people can come and like have honest relationships and just be together and like deal with like in a really wholesome way, with like having just like a good place to grow, or a good place to just kind of get away from, and in a way it is to like a little hermitage to get away from like ongoing toxicity too. I mean, that's a healthy thing, to be able to like step out of the torrent and just to like have a healthy space where you can like kind of deepen your roots and not constantly have this anxiety of like the next thing you have to do or this next attack, you know. That's super valuable. And in terms of a religious or spiritual community, I think that's only becoming more relevant, because having an infinite amount of information about anything you could ever want pretty much in real time, as much as you want, there's some obvious negative impacts that that's having on people's psychology, on our health, and all that. And so to have a place or a space that also just is designed to have like more reflective, kind of more, I mean, my wife's a Chinese acupuncturist, there's yin and yang, and she says, and in general, this is such a yang time. It's like perform, be, step up, show, demonstrate, do. Busy, 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 busy. That's the modern mantra. If people say mantra means something I'm kind of like obsessed about. Like we're all obsessed about constantly filling our time with busyness. And we're expected to with our responsibilities as well. So to have little pockets of space where we can just settle and relax, and that's what it's designed for. That I think that only becomes more and more valuable, both with our physical health and our mental health too. So in that way, that's like kind of a positive thing, that sometimes when it is darker or kind of stronger tensions are there, like sometimes the light is a little brighter. Sometimes the things are a little clearer to discern, like when we're kind of really off track and we're getting in a rut of something, sometimes it's easier to see when we step back or in those times.